West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. A big development today in Donald Trump's ongoing quest to turn the Republican Party into a vehicle for his own authoritarian aspirations. Of course, the former president continues to exert this power over the Republican Party with a litmus test he created for Republican politicians after his ignominious defeat. And the single question they must answer is, did they support his attempted coup? And would they support a coup in the future? And if the answer is no to either question, they're in trouble. We're seeing this again today. How Donald Trump has set his sights with complete monomaniacal focus on this question above all other issues. Now remember Trump's now legendary bullying of Georgia's Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger. Trump called him in early January, asking him to just find 11,000 votes to change the outcome of the race in Georgia.
I just want to find 11,780 votes, which is one more than we have, because we won the state. So what are we going to do here, folks? I only need 11,000 votes. Fellas, I need 11,000 votes. Give me a break.
As we all know, Raffensperger refused to participate in the coup. Not even clear what he could do if he wanted to, but he refused to find 11,000 votes. And so Raffensperger now has a Trump-endorsed primary challenger.
Your next Secretary of State, a friend of mine, somebody has done a phenomenal job. Jody Heiss. Jody, come here. And Jody is running against one of the worst Secretary of States in America, Rhino Brad Raffensperger, who is trying to turn the tables on me because I'm fighting for election integrity. To be honest, I was surprised. Here's a congressman who's loved in his district, who's got no problems, no election problems. He could be there forever. And he said, I want to do this because what's happened to the state of Georgia is a disgrace.
So Brad Raffensperger doesn't support the coup despite repeated bullying by Trump. And Trump backs a primary challenger to get rid of Brad Raffensperger so there will be a more coup-pliant replacement. It's a single-issue primary challenge. Raffensperger refused to cave to the demands he steal an election. He must now be removed. And as you heard Donald Trump imply there, it's also fair to conclude that Jody Heiss would pass the litmus test and participate in the coup. In fact, he was one of the 147 Republicans who voted to overturn the election results on January 6th, just hours after the insurrectionists had been cleared out of the Capitol. So that's the central issue here. It's why Jody Heiss is running. It's why he's been endorsed. He has essentially promised he will deliver an election for Trump. He will even steal it. He will be a good, loyal foot soldier in the next coup. Well, today, Donald Trump has set his sights on another statewide office holder in Georgia, Governor Brian Kemp. Now, Kemp, you might remember, used to have Brad Raffensperger's job, the Secretary of State. And in that role, he made all sorts of changes, including closing polling places, purging voters from the roll, and putting 53,000 voter registration applications on hold just before the 2018 election when he was running for governor. On election night, Kemp beat Democratic challenger Stacey Abrams by a margin of about 54,000 votes. She contends that margin was basically due to the changes he had made as Secretary of State to suppress the vote. So in Brian Kemp, we are not talking about a guy with a stalwart commitment to ballot access, democratic integrity. In fact, he has a reputation for just the opposite. But like Brad Raffensperger, Brian Kemp refused to actively foment a coup, despite the fact that, like Brad Raffensperger, he also was on the receiving end of a call from Donald Trump asking him to do so. And ever since, Trump has been trying to get rid of him too. In September, when Trump held a rally in Georgia, he hinted that Kemp would be primaried and that he had a candidate in mind.
Your rhino governor, Brian Kemp, who's been a complete disaster on election integrity. A complete and total, and I'm not looking to say that. I'm not looking to say that. He's been a complete and total disaster on election integrity. With us tonight, a friend of mine and a great senator, a man who, I don't know, are you going to run for governor, David Perdue? Are you going to run for governor? Where's David Perdue? Stand up, David. David Perdue. Are you running for governor, David? Did I hear he's running for governor? Thank you, David. He's a great guy, and he loves this state, and he's done a fantastic job.
Of course, Perdue can run for governor because he lost that Senate race quite infamously. Now, last week, Stacey Abrams announced she's running for governor again, a rematch being set up, 2018. And in response, Donald Trump issued this deranged, unhinged statement, quote, "Stacey the Hoax Abrams has just announced she's running for governor of Georgia. I beat her single-handedly. Without much of a candidate in 2018, I'll beat her again. But it'll be hard to do with Brian Kemp because the MAGA base will just not vote for him after what he did with respect to election integrity and to horribly run elections for president and then 2 Senate seats. But some good Republican will run, and some good Republican will get my endorsement, and some good Republican will win." Well, you probably know where this is going. Lo and behold, some good Republican has raised his hand.
I'm David Perdue. I'm running for governor to make sure Stacey Abrams is never governor of Georgia. To fight back, we simply have to be united. Unfortunately, today, we are divided, and Brian Kemp and Brad Raffensperger are to blame. Look, I like Brian. This isn't personal. It's simple. He has failed all of us and cannot win in November. Instead of protecting our elections, he caved to Abrams and cost us 2 Senate seats, the Senate majority, and gave Joe Biden free rein. Think about how different it would be today if Kemp had fought Abrams first instead of fighting Trump.
What does that even mean? Just minutes ago, as if it were coordinated, the official stamp for approval from Donald Trump came in. He released this statement, never missing a chance to knock the current governor. Quote, "Kemp has been a very weak governor. The liberals and rhinos have run all over him on election integrity and more. David Perdue has my complete and total endorsement. He will not let you down." Will not let you down. That's not about the people of Georgia. It's about Donald Trump. Because it's about one thing. David Perdue knows it. He can say his campaign is about whatever the heck he wants. It exists for one reason: to remove Brian Kemp and replace him with a Republican who will participate in Donald Trump's next coup. That's not hyperbole. That is just the plain facts as they appear before us. Incumbent politicians, to be clear, rarely get primaried unless they are in really disastrously dire straits. Incumbents generally run for re-election with the blessing of their party, usually because they control the state party if they're the governor, and because they have the name recognition and they have the notorious power of incumbency behind them. You do not replace an incumbent if you can avoid it normally. The exceptional problem happening with this incumbent, of course, isn't anything Kemp did policy-wise. It is the failure to pull off a coup for Donald Trump, to alter the trajectory of American democracy away from election by the people and towards an authoritarian dictate from above of who gets to be the next president. And so David Perdue can make noise about election integrity all he wants, which is just a euphemism. That's not what he's running on. He is running on a platform of Brian Kemp didn't pull off Donald Trump's coup. He did not take the shot at American democracy, but I will. That's it. End of story. That's what this election is about. Donald Trump's monomaniacal focus on the pro-coup litmus test is working. We are seeing it. State after state, office after office, part of a broad assault on the basic mechanics of democracy and representation. As the Washington Post reported, Trump allies are working to install their supporters, like David Perdue, quote, in key election posts across the country, part of a wave of Republican contenders who've embraced the former president's false assertions about the 2020 election. Donald Trump is looking for collaborators. He wants collaborators for his next run at American representative government to destroy it, and he's getting them in droves.
It is Tuesday, the 7th of December of 2021, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays, a small scant dash. A mere pinch of hot smoked Hungarian paprika will make all the difference in the world. It always has, it always will, and I'll tell you what. Everybody thinks that Japan bombed Pearl Harbor because we put some restrictions on them capturing oil reserves from countries that they were taking over. And they got mad at us for getting in the way, so they bombed Pearl Harbor. Everybody thinks it's about the oil. I say it might have been about the paprika. I'm serious. It could have been about the paprika. No one ever talks about the mandates that we set down about paprika distribution at the time. Could have been, but I think history will show it was really about the oil. All right. Well, you know, when you want to try to stop an imperial takeover of the world, sometimes a few eggs got to get cracked, and you better use some paprika. It will make the difference. Alrighty. Well, there's so much to go over today, plus our curated part of the show. We must not forget about that. But I would be remiss if I didn't bring up one of the most astounding news stories yesterday, and that was, yes, but her AirPods. They're going to go after Kamala Harris for eating fried chicken with her hands and wearing AirPods with the little wires hanging down off of them. As if that is supposed to be, I don't know, some sort of terrible thing. And in the midst of it, she's got some disgruntled employees who weren't doing their job, whining about what a terrible taskmaster she is. Yeah, my experience with disgruntled aides is usually they're disgruntled because they haven't been doing a very good job. I was reminded of a campaign event in New Hampshire by some friends who had attended. And they said that that was the worst organized campaign event that they've been to in 50 years of going to these campaign events. From the time they first started being able to vote, which was, I got to tell you, 18. It tells you how old we are. And they were thinking, wow, are the aides the ones that organized that event? Because that was bad. And I think that that's really what we're up against here. Disgruntled employees not being able to do their job. Rather than admit they're doing a job, they're going to lob petty critiques about their superior, fellow workers. Yes. So we see through that, and every organization is going to have that. All right? Everyone. So first we heard about how overprepared she is. Now we're hearing she doesn't want to prepare. Shut up. She wears AirPods instead of Bluetooth. She has a phobia about Bluetooth. Well, I'm not going to get into the discussion about the security of the Bluetooth. We all know what happens there with malware, don't we? But but her AirPods is just another Obama's tan suit. Oh, Barack uses Grey Poupon. What an uppity black man he is. Yeah. Uh-huh. Or as I also read, that it really wasn't about her emails. It's more about they are females. But they're females. And Kamala happens to be a woman of color, which makes it even more triggering for those out there that cannot stand being, well, shall we say, open in an open society. Yes. I also love that we liberals are considered to be Nazis and slave owners because of public health. Now, we all know the Nazi tactic is to blame your enemy with what you are doing. It's one of the oldest tactics in the world. It actually preceded the Nazis, but they put it into, shall we say, a more refined, Germanic, codified way. Yes, the Germans are engineers, and they really know how to put things together, don't they? So we all know what that means. Whenever a Nazi calls you a Nazi, it just means they are Nazis. I got into a little bit of a back and forth with, I think it was a young kid. And when I say a young kid, somebody under the age of 30. That's how old we are. No, I think it was actually a bit younger than that. And it may have not even been a person. It could have been, a bot. Could have been a troll bot. I was hoping that they're getting paid in rubles. That's what I'm hoping. Because, arguing with a machine, I don't know. It's not as much fun as arguing with some dimwit kid getting paid in rubles who really doesn't know anything about America. But I was in this discussion with this online persona who took exception to a tweet I had about what libertarians were saying in 2009 about, we can get the Voting Rights Act now because there's no racism in America. A black president has been elected. And, of course, everybody at the time said, wait a second, this is when the racists are going to get even more racist. And by dint of the fact that you want to get rid of the Voting Rights Act means that, you know what? And then with what they say now is that they don't even have to put on any niceties. Now it's like, we have to take rights away from everybody. We gotta make women earthen vessels. Otherwise, they're all going to take my stuff. The complaint of the Republicans, the conservatives, the libertarian. They always whine about some group. Sometimes it's the government going to take their stuff. I can't let somebody else have rights because if they get rights, that means I have less rights. That's not how it works, you dimwit. But because I had identified libertarian rather than the overarching just, right-wing conservative or Nazi, I was taken to task by this online persona, whom or whatever it is or was, that liberals are not fascists. Well, where did you get that? And then they're trying to tell me that I don't know what libertarian is. What? They were telling me to grow up and maybe I'll learn. Well, I got to tell you, Sonny, I've been dealing with Ayn Rand libertarianism since the 60s when all my friends were reading Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged and I was reading Thomas Merton instead. I wanted to have a grounding in that before I put my head into the swill of selfishness and greed and blame the other. So I know exactly what libertarianism is, and it ain't liberal. And they took exception because, I was just joking around, and, jokes are true. Libertarians are really just temporarily embarrassed Nazis. And now the chickens are coming home to roost. I have not met a libertarian yet who does not think that the interstate highway system is a commie plot. So don't tell me libertarians are part of the great liberal tradition, all about freedom. Because as soon as the authoritarian comes to be, they're right there. All right. Got that off my chest. What else is there? There's so much. There is so much. I mean, we even have, this David Perdue. Well, Chris Hayes spoke about that whole campaign at the top. Let's primary all these traitors, these turncoats, which actually might bode well for us, the American people, in this hostile takeover of the United States of America by mobsters helped with Russia, and they're Nazis too. Using all the Nazi tactics, I'll say that. And they're fascisti. That's the plural of fascist. Fascisti. And let's not forget it. So, of course, there's the usual reaction out there with, oh, you're being an alarmist. Yeah, how many times have I heard that before? And all the people who said we were alarmist a few years ago are saying, I got to tell you, most of them, 99.99999% are now saying, wow, why didn't we do anything about this before? It got to this point. Because everybody said we were being alarmists. And they're telling us now, a new set are telling us now, oh, you're being an alarmist. Yeah, I think that somebody's getting paid with rubles. Okay, that's my go-to, all right? It could be in reals also. Because where did Trump get this money? This $1 billion investment for his media company? Damn right. The FCC and others should be looking into this, Treasury. Could it have come from the Sauds? Could have been. I don't know if Vlad's willing to extend any largesse at this point. I think he's still wants to get some more payback from the largesse he extended earlier. 2016. A little bit after that, too. He wants more of a return. So just like when Trump outstayed his welcome with the Sicilian mob in New York with his bankrupt casinos, serial bankrupted mob casinos, you don't want to do that. He had to go run into the Russian mob. And when you go run into the Russian mob, you don't do anything with the Russian mob until Vlad says it's okay. Now it looks like Trump is, Jared and a few of the others, even Trump himself, put out the entreaties to the Sauds while he was still in office. Covered up a few dismemberments, one that we know of. Yeah. So I think he's getting his money in reals. And maybe people are being paid off in reals. I'm well aware of the Saud's intelligence apparatus. Hell, I lived in UC Berkeley, or near UC Berkeley, a couple of blocks away. Managed the Bison Brewing Company right there at Telegraph and Parker. I'm well aware of the Saud's intelligence apparatus. They were there, keeping track of us. Well, there's some students from Saudi Arabia where they were keeping track of. And anybody who might come across their path. Know all about it. So the FCC and the Treasury would do well to investigate that transaction. All right. Not even getting into Nunez quitting his job as, this guy had access to all the military and intelligence secrets of the United States, and he's walking away from that to become CEO of Trump's company. I think that he's hoping there's not an extradition treaty with wherever he lands. Something big time's coming down on Devin, and I have an idea what it is. Starts with a T, ends with an R, and in the middle is Traitor. Yeah, Raider. Traitor. There we go. Sometimes when you have to explain a joke, it's no longer funny, is it? No, it's not. Okay, enough of this rigmarole, let's get into the curated part of the show, because there's enough to be, pissed off about in the world. We'll put some order to our peak. All right. I already spoke about David Perdue's campaign. Well, it exists for one thing, and that's one thing only: to remove Kemp and replace him with a Republican who will participate in Donald Trump's next coup. I would say there isn't going to be a next coup. The same coup that's been going on is still happening and will still continue to happen. It's not another coup. It's the same old one. On the rest of the menu, the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers subpoenaed by the January 6th Commission could shed light on the rise of far-right extremism. Well, at least the recent iteration of it. The Treasury Department wants more oversight of all cash real estate deals, like the ones Trump laundered Russian money with. Also Saud money. Let's not forget. And a pair of California parents could face misdemeanor charges for knowingly sending their child to school with COVID, and then they had an outbreak right before Thanksgiving. Thank you very much. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where the main scientific organizations in Germany have accused the country's biggest-selling newspaper of contributing to public hostility against scientists during the pandemic. Yeah, that was pretty wordy, but you get what I mean. And British parliamentary authorities are calling in the police after traces of cocaine were found in Boris Johnson's washroom and other sites in Parliament. Ooh, a scandal. Could be even a royal drug scandal. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Radio.com. To the right of the page is the chat room link, and the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. To the left of that chat room link, that's near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, across to the left is the link to our Patreon page. And if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, it really helps us pay our bills and continue upgrading the needed machinery and software that's well needed to keep this powerhouse of resisting. Did you know that we've been doing this 24/7, 365 broadcast for almost 11 years? And we would be unable to do it without you. If you could afford an espresso-type coffee drink, and if you could afford to send those funds our way once a month, it really does help us pay our bills. It really does help us continue upgrading the machinery and software that's needed to powerhouse this resistance powerhouse, indeed. And we would truly be unable to do it without you. So thank you for your generosity, and we need money. That's really what it gets down to. Anyway, thank you for your generosity, and thank you in advance for considering being so generous in the future. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that. Thank you, Tom. I take care of me, and who am I? Well, I am at Justice Putnam on Twitter, and you can follow me there because I'll tell you why. I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's about 10 minutes before showtime. Then I get that linked up on Twitter and other social media platforms. And the show notes and links are very important because that's where the real reportage can be found. So check it out. You can follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West, and do please pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., etc., etc. Yeah, I'm in the... God, it's a task. It really is a task. I got to go through all of the archives on Spreaker and bring down the hours that have been archived there. And I guess we're going to put it over at the Wayback Machine, over at the Internet Archive. And that's where we will keep Netroots Radio's history of shows. I mean, we only have about 11 years of them. Jeez, thank you. Not all on Spreaker, but still. So it's a task to get that over there. I don't know. Do we continue paying Spreaker for their... I guess we were under an introductory account. Okay, thanks. But, yeah, so I have to figure out how many hours I can actually keep, and then it'll be a process of rotating them over into where we will archive them. And we may be just using Libsyn as the primary podcast hosting. I guess that's how it is called. And we got a little bit of this month left before, Spreaker shuts down things that we've been accustomed to for quite a while now. Okay, that stated, that's a little bit of inside baseball, but you ought to know it because we've been using Spreaker for quite a few years now. And so we'll just make a decision about that here in a bit. But yeah, I am moving hours and hours and hours of our shows over to the Internet Archive. And we'll give you the needed links when the actual cutoff from Spreaker happens. Thanks so much. Okay, this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe on this fine Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays is Out of the American Independent by Matt Cohen. On November 23rd, the House committee investigating the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol by pro-Trump rioters issued a round of subpoenas that piqued the interest of domestic terror and extremism researchers, the far-right paramilitary groups known as the Proud Boys, the Oath Keepers, and the First Amendment Praetorian. It's no secret that members of those groups were involved in the insurrection, which led to multiple deaths and hundreds of injuries. Still, there are multiple questions about their role in the attack, especially in the days prior, to which the committee is hoping to find answers, and in the process, it could unveil information valuable to extremism experts. In announcing the round of subpoenas, which target both the general organizations and their individual leaders, Enrique Tarrio of the Proud Boys, Oath Keepers founder Elmer Stewart Rhodes, and First Amendment Praetorian co-founder Robert Patrick Lewis, Mississippi Representative Benny Thompson said that the committee believes that these groups have, quote, relevant information about how violence erupted at the Capitol and the preparation leading up to this violent attack, end quote. What relevant information these groups might have is of great interest to Heidi Beirich, the co-founder of the Global Project Against Hate and Extremism. For Beirich, the first big question related to these subpoenas is the group's relationships with people close to former President Donald Trump and his campaign and administration. With direct conversations, or what direct conversations were people in the Proud Boys or Oath Keepers having with campaign staffers, with people like Steve Bannon, with some of those groups that circle around Trump, like Women for Trump, Beirich said. I would like to know how all that ecosystem works. And if it was hooked up, she said. We know the Proud Boys have provided security for Roger Stone in the past, but is the relationship closer than we think? There's also the question of how much planning those groups had done in the days leading up to January 6th that Beirich is hoping comes to light from the subpoenas. Did they have intentions to storm the Capitol? What kind of conversations were they having? Was there any kind of cross-extremist group coordination, she asked. The Justice Department's investigation into January 6, in which more than 670 people have been charged, revealed that the Oath Keepers communicated prior to the attack. But that's merely surface-level evidence of their planning and reveals minimal information about how these groups were organizing. Even the best open-source investigations cannot fill in everything, said Jared Holt, a resident fellow researching domestic extremism at the Atlantic Council's Digital Forensic Research Lab, which is assisting the House Select Committee with its investigation. What's missing, he said, is what was happening behind the scenes, and precisely the question of who knew what and when and what influences contributed most significantly or most directly to what happened on January 6. Whatever may be discovered from the subpoenas could give researchers like Byrick and Holt a deeper understanding of how far-right extremism groups function more broadly. In October, a massive leak of Oath Keeper data revealed that its members have far deeper ties to law enforcement, the armed services, and even some state houses than previously known. If the House Committee's investigation dredges up any more similar documents or data, it could reveal even more. Amir Madhani of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The Biden administration is looking to expand reporting requirements on all cash real estate deals to help crack down on bad actors' use of the U.S. market to launder money made through illicit activity. The Treasury Department was posting notice yesterday, Monday, seeking public comment for a potential regulation that would address what it says is a vulnerability in the real estate market. Currently, title insurance companies in just 12 metropolitan areas are required to file reports identifying people who make all-cash purchases of residential real estate through shell companies if the transaction exceeds $300,000. Increasing transparency in the real estate market will curb the ability of corrupt officials and criminals to launder the proceeds of their ill-gotten gains through the U.S. real estate market, said Mali Das, acting director of the Treasury's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, FinCEN. Das said the move could strengthen U.S. national security and help protect the integrity of the U.S. financial system. The metropolitan areas currently facing reporting requirements are Boston, Chicago, Dallas-Fort Worth, Honolulu, Las Vegas, Miami, New York City, San Antonio, San Diego, San Francisco, and Seattle. The U.S. real estate market has long been viewed as a stable way station for corrupt government officials around the globe and other illicit actors looking to launder proceeds from criminal activity. Just go to Dunny. The use of shell companies by current and former world leaders and those close to them to purchase real estate and other assets in the U.S. and elsewhere was recently spotlighted by the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists' publication of the Pandora Papers. The leaked documents, acquired by the consortium, showed King Abdullah II of Jordan, former UK Prime Minister Tony Blair, and other prominent figures used shell companies to purchase mansions, exclusive beachfront property, yachts, and other assets for the past quarter century. The tax dodges can be legal but have spawned various proposals to enhance tax transparency and reinforce the fight against tax evasion. The effort to push for new real estate market regulation comes as the Biden administration issued its U.S. strategy on countering corruption. The strategy was published as President Joe Biden prepares to host the first White House Democracy Summit, a virtual gathering of leaders and civil society experts from more than 100 countries that is to take place on Thursday and Friday. The strategy offers broad brushstrokes for confronting corruption at home and abroad. It includes calls for the U.S. government to shore up regulatory gaps, elevating anti-corruption in U.S. diplomatic efforts, and bolstering the protection of civil society and members of the media, including investigative journalists who expose corruption. Associated Press bring us this final offering here on the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. Northern California parents knowingly sent their COVID-19 positive child and a sibling to school last month in violation of isolation and quarantine rules, causing a coronavirus outbreak in an elementary school. The parents could face a fine or a misdemeanor charge for violating Marin County's health order, under which people who test positive for the virus must isolate themselves for at least 10 days. Dr. Matt Willis, the county's public health officer, told the AP that a decision will be made early next week whether the family will face a penalty. It's a violation of the law that we put in place, he said. More importantly, it's also a violation of just basic ethics of community responsibility. The child tested positive for the virus during the week of November 8, according to Brett Geithman, superintendent of the Larkspur-Corte Madera School District. Both children continued to attend the school for the rest of the week and into the following week. The child and their sibling, who later tested positive as well, are students in the district's Neil Cummins Elementary School in Corte Madera, a town in Marin County that's 15 miles north of San Francisco. The parents did not notify the school of the positive test or return multiple calls from public health contract tracers. Our enforcement team is evaluating the circumstances and will respond accordingly, Marin County Public Health said in a statement. Thankfully, this is the only known occurrence of a household knowingly sending a COVID-19 positive student to school. Willis said when the school's principal spoke to the family, they had cited that they were not clear on the protocol to isolate the child after the positive test. Willis said language barriers or economic factors, meaning the parents could not take time off from work when the kids needed to isolate at home, did not appear to be a factor for the family. He also said it was quite simple for people to know not to send their children to school if they test positive for the virus. On November 18th, public health officials contacted the school district after they noticed a discrepancy in records, according to Geithman. We noticed you did not enter student X into the database of students with COVID-19, Geithman said district officials were told. The district immediately contacted the families of students who were exposed and told them to report to the school for rapid testing the next morning. A total of 8 students tested positive. The original student, their sibling, 3 classmates of theirs who are suspected school-based transmissions, and 3 students who are suspected of household transmissions. None of the students experienced serious illness or had to be hospitalized. About 75 students were exposed to the virus from the 8 cases. No staff members tested positive, and schools have an indoor mask mandate. The district issued a corrective action to the family, but Geithman said he could not discuss what that was. The superintendent said the family caused a safety risk to students, staff, and the school community that easily could have spread further over the Thanksgiving break if the exposed families had not been informed. I would say throw the book at him, but that's just me. Well, let's get to our break, and when we get back from the break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
The discovery of penicillin in 1928 by Alexander Fleming was one of the greatest scientific achievements of the 20th century. It's hard to imagine a world before the development of what many consider to be miracle drugs. However, just 90 years ago, antibiotics weren't available. Thanks to antibiotics, some common illnesses such as strep throat are now easily treated, whereas in the past they often led to serious complications. Antibiotics serve an important role in keeping you and your loved ones healthy, but it's important to remember that antibiotics only treat bacterial infections. Most common infections such as colds, flu, most sore throats, bronchitis, and many sinus and ear infections are caused by viruses and do not respond to antibiotic treatment. These infections can be overcome by simply treating the symptoms and letting the illness run its course. Unfortunately, antibiotics have often been overused, resulting in decreased effectiveness and an increase in antibiotic-resistant diseases. Antibiotic resistance, or the increased ability of bacteria to survive in the presence of antibiotics, has become a major public health threat that we all need to help fight. When a person takes antibiotics, they are at risk for possibly having a bad reaction to these drugs. Some side effects can be quite serious, or even life-threatening in the case of an allergic reaction or severe diarrhea. This is why it is very important to only use antibiotics when they are absolutely needed, and not for viral infections. Talk to your healthcare professional about the best treatment for your illness. If it is caused by a virus, follow his or her recommendation for treating the symptoms. Learn more about appropriate antibiotic use and how to feel better when you don't need an antibiotic by visiting CDC's Get Smart, Know When Antibiotics Work website at cdc.gov/getsmart/community.
For the most accurate health information, visit www.cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. And it doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage. Because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
This is 60 Second Civics, the daily podcast of the Center for Civic Education. I'm Mark Gage. The Magna Carta was agreed to by King John in 1215 at the now famous Runnymede, which is a field beside the River Thames in England. The Magna Carta is significant because it applied to both the king and the people he ruled. It is a written expression of the idea that a nation is governed by the rule of law, not by the unpredictable actions of rulers. King John was deeply unpopular with his barons. During this period, the king relied on the cooperation of the barons in order to run the country. The barons had been paying increasingly heavy taxes in order to pay for a war with France. John was ruthless in exacting payments from the barons, and this increased their hostility. The barons revolted and captured London. King John was then forced to bargain with the nobles and agreed to the Magna Carta. The king later claimed he was forced to sign the document, and the Pope agreed with him. This led to even more war. However, King John died in 1216, and his son, Henry III, assumed the throne. Henry III affirmed the Magna Carta, and this Charter of Rights eventually came to be recognized as a foundation of English statutory law. That's all for today's podcast, 60 Second Civics, where civic education only takes a minute.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1896. That was the day 11 steam engineers met in Chicago to found the National Union of Steam Engineers, the forerunner to the International Union of Operating Engineers. 10 of the 11 came from the stationary field. They often worked 60 to 90 hours a week in dangerous working conditions. Constructing and operating steam boilers was highly skilled, labor-intensive, and potentially dangerous work. At the time, boilers were used for steam-powered railroad and construction shovels, hoists and cranes for high-rise construction, and electric power generation. Many flocked to San Francisco after the 1906 earthquake to help rebuild that city. Others left for Panama to work on the canal. By 1912, the union was issuing charters to locals that represented construction steam engineers and locals that represented fixed boiler operators. It was renamed the International Union of Operating Engineers in 1928. During World War II and after, thousands worked as Navy Seabees, building military bases, airfields, and roads. The Federal Highway Trust Program opened up work for thousands more in the construction of the nation's highway system. Today, you can find operating engineers on bridges and dam projects, skyscrapers, and pipelines. Its logo, the steam gauge, was originally set at 80 psi, but now points towards 420 psi. Some think the change came as a result of operating high-pressure boilers for naval ships and steamboats. Others speculate the change came when the 600 psi gauge became the industrial standard. The Industrial Union of Operating Engineers administers 100 apprenticeships in state-of-the-art facilities requiring 6,000 hours of on-the-job training and 400 hours classroom instruction. It represents more than 400,000 members in 170 locals throughout the United States and Canada.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 44 degrees Fahrenheit, had quite a bit of rain overnight. Morning clouds will give way to afternoon sunshine, and highs will be near 50, winds light and variable. And then partly cloudy this evening, followed by increasing clouds with showers developing over or after midnight, with lows in the low 40s, winds light and variable, and the rain should bring a little bit less than a quarter inch. And then showers in the morning, then cloudy in the afternoon, highs near 45 tomorrow, winds light and variable, and something a little over than a tenth of an inch expected tomorrow. Confirmed cases of coronavirus in Jackson County have increased once again and stand at 251,005 confirmed cases, with 363 confirmed deceased. Pollen is rated as none outside the window here in Rogue River proper. The air quality index for the region is good at 20 parts per million, and the daytime UV index is low at level 1. Barometric pressure is rising at 30.08 inches. Visibility is down to 1.5 miles, and relative humidity is at 96%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that are crowdsources from around the world. London is 48 with rain. Paris is 45 degrees and mostly cloudy. Rome is 51 and sunny. Kyiv is 33 with light rain. Kabul is 38 degrees and clear. Hong Kong is 64 and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 51 with rain. Sydney, Australia is 67 and mostly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 50 degrees and mostly cloudy. And New York is 40 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny. And that is Weather from Around the World, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Anonymous staff at the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A group representing Germany's main scientific organizations has accused the country's biggest-selling newspaper of contributing to public hostility against scientists during the coronavirus pandemic. In a statement yesterday, Monday, the Alliance of Scientific Organization criticized a recent report by the Bild tabloid for singling out 3 researchers who had called for tougher restrictions to reduce COVID-19 infections in Germany. The paper published pictures of the 3 scientists on Saturday, with the headline reading, "Trio of experts gives us frustration for the holidays." The alliance said making it seem like the 3 researchers personally were responsible for unpopular measures could easily contribute to a climate of opinion that has elsewhere already led to scientists being subjected to or threatened with physical or psychological violence.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Even more anonymous staff at the Associated Press bring us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. British parliamentary authorities are calling in the police after a newspaper reported that traces of cocaine had been found at numerous sites in Parliament. House of Commons Speaker Lindsay Hoyle said he was contacting police after the Sunday Times reported that illegal drugs were being used inside Parliament buildings. The newspaper said tests using drug detection wipes found traces of cocaine in 11 locations that were only accessible to or by accredited parliamentary lawmakers, staff, and journalists, including a washroom near Prime Minister Boris Johnson's parliamentary office. The accounts of drug use in Parliament given to the Sunday Times are deeply concerning, and I will be raising them as a priority with the Metropolitan Police this week, Hoyle said in a statement. Johnson spokesman Max Blaine said that the reports are concerning. The government also plans to target recreational drug users to suppress demand for narcotics, including by contacting clients found in drug dealers' seized phones with a range of messages to discourage their drug use. Well. That brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we're going to meet up tomorrow for Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here, in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.